Hi, Chef Payne.
Hey, Chef Sam's, what's up?
Well, I thought we'd mix together some croissant dough. So we're gonna mix up the dough today. We're gonna retard it overnight. We're gonna laminate tomorrow. So, from your reading, you might remember some of these terms. The dough for laminated products is called de trempe, the dough, just the dough. The fat that we soften and encase in the dough is called barrage, a soft, cool, malleable fat. Butter is my preference because it tastes so good. And the highest quality butter you can find. Any of the European butters have a higher percentage of butter fat. So, and then we will lock that fat into the dough tomorrow and it will turn into a paton, P-A-T-O-N. Once it's laminated, then it is croissant. So, let's get busy. So what I have here is I've got, so we talked about the richness of croissant dough. It's not the most rich. The most rich is Danish, has a little bit more fat and sugar than croissant. The most lean is puff pastry. So there's differences in the dough and then there's differences in the lamination technique. So let's get on with this. So I'm going to put, there's no water in this, it's milk. I'm gonna put milk in. So all my liquids first, right? So you know how I like to do that because I like to give my yeast first chance. So look at that yeast, all that yeast. This is an ideal product to use osmotolerant yeast. Okay, I'm gonna drop sugar down in here. Sugar, oh sugar, sugar, na 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 na. Oh honey, honey. Okay, so then bread flour, and then what goes on top of bread flour? Does anybody remember the last ingredient in the Sam's method? Salt. As far away from the yeast as I can get it. Okay, so this dough, the de trempe, calls for a little butter. So I'm just going to gently tap it with the rolling pin, and we'll use the same process tomorrow to soften our large portion of fat. Here is the barrage right here. It's actually, barrage means to soften butter, to soften fat. A-G-E in French is a verb, so it's the process of. So we will soften that fat tomorrow, but we will leave it in the refrigerator overnight so it's nice and cold. Brings me to a great point. The milk is cold, the eggs are cold. You want to keep everything cold for laminated doughs because I don't want to encourage fermentation quite yet. I want to get a little control over it before I do that. So I'm starting to come together here. I've got it on nice and low. It's just starting to pick up. Here's a fun fact. Laminated doughs are pretty stiff doughs until you add all the fat to them. So you can see how it's kind of grinding away. This is very different than a focaccia dough or a sour. Those are a little higher in hydration. Now that it's kind of coming together, I'm gonna add my fat. I'm gonna hold on to my bowl so that it doesn't come off of the mixer. With these tight doughs, it has a tendency to sort of torque your bowl. So once this becomes incorporated, I've got a nice hold on it. I'm just gonna turn it up one notch. So I am going to underdevelop this. It's very important to underdevelop yeasted laminated doughs. So this laminated dough has yeast in it. So two forms of leavening. We are utilizing physical from the layers of fat throughout the dough that melt in the oven, create steam, and that creates your push. And then a little yeast. So croissant has yeast and Danish has yeast, but puff pastry 100% physically leavened. So you can hear my mixer struggling. This is the one that likes to trip the breaker. So I'm just watching for the last bit of that fat to become incorporated, and then I'm just gonna pat it into a square, and I'm gonna cover it loosely, and it's gonna go into the walk-in overnight. All right, I'm gonna take this down and I'm gonna finish this on the bench because he's being a little, I don't want him to tweak out my mixer too bad. So I'm just trying to get him to come together. He's a tight one. He's not as tight as bagel, so we got that going for us. Okay, and you can see how it's tearing, and that's okay. See this torn areas of gluten? That's fine. This will all get developed tomorrow during lamination. So I'm going to put him in a loosely wrapped, give him a little wiggle room because he's gonna grow. Although he's cold and he's going into the walk-in, it'll slow fermentation, but it won't stop it. And then here's my fat. I'll put these two things together right on top of each other into the walk-in overnight, and we'll see you tomorrow for lamination. Hey, Chef Payne.
Hi.
Okay, so we are now the second day on our croissant. Chef Payne is gonna sheet this dough down to about a 1/2-inch rectangle. Look how smooth this dough has gotten just from overnight, letting it sit, hydrate, gluten strands naturally aligned. It was real shaggy. We had not fully developed the gluten yesterday because we're gonna do it today. So she's gonna sheet it down to a 1/2 inch. She's got a little flour on both sides of her dough. We need 1/2 inch, a rectangle, before we add our fat. So this, if you all remember from yesterday, is the de trempe. And Chef Payne's gonna drive this boy. Oh yeah. And she's gonna bring it down to 1/2 inch rectangle. She's gonna use this handle with a gauge. We started at 40, we're gonna work our way down to 20. That's about a 1/2 inch. While Chef Payne is doing that, I'm gonna pound this butter, soften this butter like so. So we are trying to reach an ideal laminating temperature of 60 degrees. I know that this fat is ready to be used for lamination if I can bend it over the table without it breaking. So we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, so we're back. Now I have been pounding the fat. Our butter, barrage, definition or translation, is a soft, malleable, but still cool butter. We're going for 60 degrees for our perfect lamination temperature of the dough and the fat. We're pretty close, so I want to demonstrate how to lock your fat into your dough. De trempe, barrage. I've got this pretty well softened, and I've just been turning it onto itself, and you just whack it, twist, lift. And you can see how it's softening. This is probably going to bring it right to about 60. We're just below 60. 60 is the temperature because, or the ideal temperature, because if it's warmer, it can sort of melt out of your layers, smush out of your layers. Doesn't melt at this point. And then if it's too cold, it'll make little leopard spots, and the butter will break up. So, de trempe, barrage, to lock our fat into our dough, I make a little parchment square. For this lock, we cover the dough with half of the fat. So we just took a little piece of parchment and we just shaped it about half the size. You feel free to use a ruler if you like. And then I'm going to simply unfold this. Put the fat in here. I'm going to reshape the square. Bench scraper is your friend. I'm going to make this little packet. A lot of people use this technique. I like it for a couple reasons. It keeps my hands from getting super covered in fat. And it also
also allows you to get this fat into the correct shape off of your dough. A lot of people will smear the dough with the fat, but then, you're pressing down on the dough to get your fat correct. And then you could have uneven thicknesses of dough throughout. So now I'm just taking a clean rolling pin, sorry I had to run to the closet real quick, to roll this fat into the packet. So before we start laminating, we'll have 3 layers. We'll have dough, fat dough. For puff pastry, we lock it in 3/4 so that when we start the lamination for puff pastry, you have dough, fat, dough, fat. So you're starting with 5 layers with puff pastry and 3 layers with croissant. And you all learned that puff pastry has the most layers, and that's one of the reasons, because you start with more layers than at the beginning. So, okay, so here's our beautiful dough pack. All right, I'm gonna go. We've tried to corner up our dough real nice. So I'm gonna pull the dough out. So we talked about being meticulous when you are laminating. So you wanna make sure that you have even amount of fat distribution to your dough. So I'm gonna just pull this guy over like so, pull him out. And then I'm gonna go straight to the sheeter. So that's a lock. We have just locked our fat into our dough. This is called a paton, P-A-T-O-N. So we're no longer just dough and fat, we're a paton. That's the package of dough and fat that's gonna be laminated. You can see fat all the way around. I want that. I wanna make sure that you've got even lamination to start with. This is the belly. The belly always goes into the sheeter first. Always goes into the sheeter first. Now I'm just gonna bring this over to the sheeter, and I'm going to get a little flour on one side, a little flour on the other side, and I'm gonna sheet this, starting at 40. I just send it through one time to seal it, and then I'm going to quarter turn it. So it was belly in first, just to seal it. Now I'm gonna quarter turn it. This way I'm stretching gluten in all directions. I wanna make sure that I have some flour on both sides. I don't know if anybody, we can always brush off the excess. I don't know if anybody's gotten dough stuck in a sheeter. It's no fun, especially when you're working so hard to laminate. Once it's stuck in the sheeter, you ruin your layers. So I'm sheeting this down to a 1/2 inch so that we can give it its first fold. And I don't mind if you all use a ruler when you're over here. So you can see that it's gotten a couple of little angles here. I'm gonna just gently manipulate these angles. If they're really severe, I can show you a technique for getting them straight. You cut right in the middle of the angle and then put it back in. So this is our first turn, our official turn, and it's a trifold turn. So we lock our fat in, and because we haven't developed too much gluten, it's not fighting us, so we can go on and get our first turn in. Our turns are tourage, so it's a trifold turn, and I'm okay with this butter. I like that butter. And now this is gonna go into the cooler to rest for about 20 or 30 minutes, okay? See you soon. Okay, so our dough has rested in the cooler for about 20 minutes. I've just taken its temp. It's climbing from about 52. I think that'll be okay. If you are worried about it being too warm, this is a little technique you can do that will gently bring it up to temp. Just pat it, flip it over and pat it, but I'm gonna go for it because I think we're good. So it's rested long enough for the gluten to relax a little bit. We're gonna go to the sheeter and we're gonna get 2 more trifolds in back to back. So day 1 of your practical, you're gonna mix your dough and measure fat, your barrage. So you're gonna mix the de-trempe, you're gonna just pull aside the butter you need. Those goes in the cooler. Day 2, you're gonna sheet out your dough, you're gonna pound and soften your fat. You're gonna lock your fat and you're gonna immediately get its first trifold in. Then you're gonna rest for 20 minutes and you're gonna go back to back trifolds, just like we did the first trifold. Belly in first to seal it, quarter turn it, sheet it down to a 1/2 inch. Brush off your excess flour, give it a trifold, repeat, belly in to seal it, quarter turn it, get your trifold in, and then it's going to go back into the cooler for another 20 minutes before final sheeting. So come on over, let's go do some sheeting. So I'm going to just, all right, belly in. So here's my belly. You can't see any fat. Not belly, not belly, not belly. Okay, just gonna give it a little hand roll, not to be confused with sushi. Okay, all I did was just seal it, quarter turn. Well, I could not say that that could be any prettier. We are very well evenly distributed there. I don't have to trim up my sides or manipulate my sides. Beautiful. And now immediately I'm going to go in belly side. Belly side. I'm gonna give it just a little love here. And, excuse me, back open to 40. Always a great thing to remember is to take the handle back to 40 for the next person. Because you certainly don't want them starting at 20. It would smoosh their dough, ruin their dough. Okay, so belly in, quarter turn. Now, he's getting a little tighter because we're developing gluten, but that's why we love these sheeters so much, because they're doing all the work. We have this sheeted down to 1/2 inch. I'm going to brush off the excess flour, giving it its last trifold or turn. If you all remember, the French term for turn is tourage. Beautiful. So he's gonna go night-night for about 20 more minutes, and then we're gonna final sheet him. See you in a bit. All right, we're back for our final sheeting. This is croissant dough final sheeting. We've gone through mixing, resting, locking in our fat, first trifold, rest, 2 more trifolds. This is final sheeting. So I want to sheet it down to a 1/4 inch. Up until now, we always sheet to a 1/2 inch, no matter what size portion the dough is. You can fill this room with dough, still needs to be a 1/2 inch. It could be the smallest amount of dough, like for your final, still needs to be a 1/2 inch. So, just like always, I'm gonna go belly in. The difference this time is that I'm gonna sheet it out much further belly in, and then I'm gonna quarter turn it to get it to 1/4 inch, because I want a large piece of dough to work with. So, do you all remember that we're having some technical difficulties with the sheeter? Chef Payne, do you remember?
I think I'm ready. I got my catcher's mitt on.
The pedal is stuck, so it will only go to the right, but we're gonna have this repaired before you all get back into class. So, I have to open it all the way up to 40. And let her rip, tater chip. Okay. No panic, no panicking. I'm just straightening up the dough. Everything is perfectly normal. I like to kind of get a grip of it before it gets
way out of shape. Okay, I'm gonna let go of the pedal. Woo, close. Okay, and I'm just gradually increasing the size of it. I'm gonna go just a little bit more. Okay, now I'm gonna turn it, get her straight, squeeze that little fat back in. Make sure we're looking good on this side. A little more flour. Got a little fat there. Where fat is coming out, you definitely want to make sure you put a little extra flour on it. To stop this bad boy, you have to now use the emergency stop. But Katie Payne and I are pretty industrious. She actually got underneath the sheeter and determined the cause. We have a broken spring. So we have service called. Okay, so now I am going to go to 1/4 inch. Are you ready, Katie? Chef Payne.
I'm ready. Excited.
Okay, a little bit more. Isn't it pretty?
Yep.
How's it underneath? I think I can go a little. Do I have any? I got plenty of flour there.
I think maybe we could put a little bit, Chef.
All right. You want to be really careful when you're getting this thin. So better safe than sorry. And I'm going to have to say, to be perfectly honest with you, there has been more than one student crying at this point in their practical because they've got the dough in the sheeter. So no doing that, okay?
No crying at culinary
There's
school.
no crying in baseball. Okay, so I'm gonna cut one more notch down and we are done. Boom, beautiful. So I'm gonna cut this into strips that we can use. And this is 1/4 inch thick, giving it a little rest. I wanna get this on a half sheet tray, so I'm gonna get 2 pieces out of it. I want to make sure I'm at 11 inches. 11 inches, so I want to make sure. Great. For croissant dough, you're going to see in the next bit of this video, from tip to base of a croissant needs to be 11 inches, so I'm just being really careful to give myself at least that much. So no sharp objects on the sheeter. I'm just gently using a rolling cutter. And then we're going to put this in the cooler overnight and we are going to finish our products after that. See ya in a little bit.